Welcome to today's deep dive. I am your host, and today we are getting into something I think every single person listening has wrestled with at some point. Our mission today is to unpack the psychology, the biology, and honestly, the practical art of just saying no.
I am so glad to be here as your expert today because, yeah, this is such a massive everyday struggle for so many of us.
It really is. And we've got some incredible source material today that breaks down the actual neurological mechanisms behind boundary setting. But I want to start by just talking directly to you, the listener. You know that feeling when your phone buzzes or a coworker catches you in the hallway and they ask for a favor?
Oh, that instant panic.
Right. Before your brain has even fully processed the words, you just hear yourself saying, sure, no problem. But inside, right in the pit of your stomach, there is this instant heavy knot because you just agree to something you absolutely did not want to do, entirely to avoid like a split second of awkwardness.
Yeah, it's a completely universal experience, and it reveals this massive paradox in the research we're looking at today. Because when you look at the data on boundary setting, the people who reflexively say yes the most are almost always the most exhausted, resentful people in the room.
Wow. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the people who comfortably and consistently say no are actually the healthiest people, both physically and psychologically.
Which, I mean, it feels entirely unfair when you consider who is usually falling into this trap. Because if you struggle to say no, you often think it's a character flaw.
Right, yeah.
Or like a lack of willpower.
Exactly. People think they're just weak.
But the sources highlight that it's frequently the exact opposite. The individuals who struggle the most are usually the most conscientious, the most emotionally attuned people in any given group. You are paying the closest attention to other people's feelings, and your reward for all that empathy is just chronic exhaustion.
It's a tough pill to swallow. And to understand how to actually change this behavior, we really have to look at why our brains actively fight against us when we try to set a boundary.
It's biology, right?
It is. The instinct to accommodate others is deeply wired into what the sources call the social threat response. So the human brain actually has overlapping circuitry for physical pain and social pain. They share the exact same neural pathways.
Wait, really? So they are processed the exact same way?
Yes. So when you imagine saying no, your brain runs this lightning-fast simulation of the other person's disappointment, and it triggers the same alarm system it uses for physical danger.
That is wild. So it's like if I imagine declining a minor coffee date, my brain literally treats it with the same panic as encountering a predator in the wild.
That is exactly it. Your brain is nudging you towards saying yes just to avoid a pain that hasn't even happened yet. It's this biological alarm system that prioritizes tribal harmony over your own individual bandwidth.
Oh, I love how you put that. And here's where it gets really interesting because it creates this terrible cycle. It's like pulling a slot machine lever where the payout is just someone else not being mad at you.
Yeah, that's the approval loop in action. Every time you say yes and you receive gratitude or relief from that other person, your brain gets a dopamine hit.
So we're literally chemically rewarded for it.
Completely. Over time, you associate being agreeable with a biological reward. So saying no starts to feel like a literal loss of reward, even when logically you know it's the healthier choice.
And I think the modern environment completely turbocharges this loop, too.
Yeah.
The sources point out how our phones are constantly messing with this dopamine regulation.
Oh, absolutely. The phones are the worst for this.
Right. Every notification ping triggers this tiny urge to respond immediately. The variable reward schedule of our devices just trains our nervous system to be hyper-vigilant. We are perpetually braced for the next request, carrying around this machine that just conditions us to prioritize everyone else's bandwidth.
And that constant state of high alert is incredibly draining. If saying yes gives us a dopamine hit and avoids the simulated pain of conflict, we really have to look at the hidden cost of doing it constantly.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I know a lot of people listening probably have this exact question. Doesn't saying yes quickly just get the problem off my plate?
It feels like it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like, if I just agree to bake the cupcakes for the school bake sale or take on the extra project at work, the immediate anxiety of the request is gone. I don't have to sit in the awkwardness.
Well, that is the illusion of the fake yes. It gets the immediate social friction out of the way, sure, but the invisible cost is immense. The sources pull from some heavy-hitting data to prove this isn't just in our heads.
Like what?
So researchers at Stanford University have heavily studied decision fatigue, and they've shown that reflexively saying yes does not save you energy. It secretly burns it.
Because you're still stressed about it.
Exactly. Your brain remains in the background, constantly processing the internal conflict between what you genuinely wanted to do and what you just obligated yourself to do.
Ah, so the visible cost is your overcommitted calendar, but the invisible cost is quiet resentment and deep exhaustion.
Yes. And work out of UC Berkeley on emotional regulation really highlights the physical mechanics of this. When you suppress your true response, like when you smile and say yes while every fiber of your being is screaming no, that requires active inhibition in your prefrontal cortex.
You're forcing your body to act against its own instincts.
Right. And to maintain that facade, your brain physically burns extra glucose and spikes your stress hormones, your cortisol, just to suppress your natural emotional reaction. It is a literal biological tax.
It's just draining your battery in the background.
No.
Which completely explains why the workplace data on this is so stark. The sources mentioned organizational psychologists affiliated with Harvard Business School, and they documented that employees who cannot say no to additional tasks show measurably higher burnout scores within a single year.
Yep. And the kicker is that happens even when they have similar workloads to their peers who do set boundaries.
Wow. So it's not the volume of work, it's the inability to set the limit.
Precisely. The American Psychological Association actually points to boundary setting as one of the most consistently protective factors against chronic stress across almost every domain of life.
That makes me wonder, though, does this biological trap ever just go away? Like, do we eventually outgrow this need to please people as we get older?
You'd hope so, right? But the timeline of boundaries in the research is fascinating because the psychological pressure doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It doesn't disappear. It just morphs depending on what stage of life you are in.
Okay, break that down for us. What does it look like in your 20s?
So in your 20s and early 30s, your identity is still forming. The comparison trap is incredibly intense. Every yes and no feels like it is permanently defining who you are to your peers, making a no feel incredibly dangerous to your social standing.
That makes sense. You're just trying to establish yourself.
Yeah, but then you hit that 28 to 35 window. The sources appropriately call this the pressure cooker.
Oh, the pressure cooker. I remember that well. Career, family, financial pressures, they all seem to peak at the exact same time.
Exactly. And self-doubt skyrockets in this window because the stakes feel monumental. Saying no to anything feels like it will be the one thing that collapses the entire house of cards you are holding together.
It's just immense pressure. And society and social media completely distort this reality for us at every age, too. We open our phones and compare our messy, exhausted, behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's highlight reel.
Which is so unfair to do to ourselves.
It really is. We are tricked into thinking everyone else is infinitely available, infinitely generous, and managing it all effortlessly. It just drains any motivation we have to protect our own time.
Yeah, that chronic comparison is toxic. And as people move into the 35 to 45 age bracket, a new challenge emerges. Thinking patterns start to calcify.
What do you mean by calcify? Like people feel their habits are just permanently fixed.
Right, they assume they're just a people pleaser and that it's an immutable personality trait. But, neuroplasticity proves the brain remains changeable at every age. The habit of saying yes is not permanent.
Which is so hopeful. What about later in life?
Moving into the 45 and beyond bracket, there's often a fear that it's too late to change, mixed with this growing pull toward legacy. And research suggests some of the most powerful mindset shifts actually happen in this stage because your reasons for protecting your time finally become crystal clear.
You realize time is finite. So if our biology, our modern environment, and the specific pressures of our age bracket are all working against us, how do we actually build the capacity to fight back?
Well, the sources suggest something really surprising here. Building psychological boundaries doesn't start with mindset. It actually starts with basic physiology.
The physiological floor,
Yeah.
right? I love this concept.
It's crucial. We mentioned the prefrontal cortex earlier. The brain's brakes. It's the part of your brain that allows you to pause, evaluate a request, and think critically rather than just reacting on autopilot.
Yeah.
And your physical state directly impacts those brakes.
That completely tracks with my own life. Whenever I am running on 4 hours of sleep, I have absolutely zero willpower.
None of us do.
Right. I will end up volunteering for a committee I don't even care about, just because my prefrontal cortex is too tired to hit the brakes.
Wait, so you're telling me eating a donut and pulling an all-nighter actually makes me a worse people pleaser?
I mean, essentially, yes. Chronic undersleeping physically weakens that part of the brain. And diets high in refined sugar create energy crashes. When your blood sugar crashes, the anxiety of a minor confrontation feels massively amplified.
What about coffee? because a huge portion of the population is running on fumes and late afternoon caffeine just to get through the day.
Yeah, so caffeine late in the day elevates your baseline anxiety. When your nervous system is already humming with artificial chemically induced stress, a no feels far more threatening than it would on a calm nervous system.
So it's just stacking the deck against yourself.
Exactly. Conversely, simple daily movement lowers cortisol reactivity. If you move regularly, your stress spike simply isn't as high when an awkward conversation pops up. Now, obviously, drinking water and taking a walk isn't going to magically fix someone's boundaries, but it builds that physiological floor. You need a stable physical foundation to access the pause before you answer. So once you have that baseline, what does the actual toolkit look like for rewiring the brain?
The practical toolkit begins with a single, highly actionable awareness step. It's called the 3-second pause.
The 3-second pause. Okay.
Whenever a request lands, whether it's a text, an email, or someone standing right at your desk, you train yourself to insert a 3-second gap before responding. You have to interrupt that automatic yes reflex.
Okay, but logistically, how do you actually do a 3-second pause in a fast-paced work meeting without looking like your brain just, buffered? If the boss asks you to take notes, you can't just stare blankly at them for 3 seconds.
Fair point. You buy the time physically, take a deliberate sip of water, or you use a placeholder script saying, let me check my bandwidth and get back to you by noon, counts as the pause. You are just breaking the momentum of the immediate yes.
And during that pause, the goal is to look for the internal no, right? This goes back to that physical signal we talked about at the start.
Yes, noticing that tight chest or that knot in your stomach.
Because your body usually knows the answer and is trying to warn you about the stress before your conscious mind has even weighed the pros and cons.
Exactly. And when you do identify that internal no and you have to deliver it, the next step is absolutely critical. Use short scripts. Do not over-explain.
I found this part so brilliant. Over-explaining is exactly like handing a lawyer a stack of evidence against you.
That is a perfect analogy.
The more reasons you give someone, like I'd love to help, but I have to take the dog to the vet and my car's making weird noise and I'm just so far behind on emails, the more angles they have to negotiate with you. They will immediately solve your excuses. Oh, my cousin is a mechanic. You can do the emails tomorrow.
They absolutely will. The research on assertive communication strongly supports this. Lengthy justifications invite negotiation. A simple, I am not able to take this on right now, is vastly more effective, respects your own authority, and drains far less of your energy.
It's just so clean. And the data gets really compelling when you look at how this plays out in real life. The sources shared some great examples. There was one case about a young professional named Lisa.
Ah, yes, Lisa. She started using the 3-second pause and tracking her yeses for a single week just to turn the abstract feeling of overwhelm into concrete data.
And what did she find?
She looked at her tracking log and found 4 commitments she had agreed to that she genuinely did not have time for. Mostly low-priority tasks she accepted simply because someone asked her in passing.
Just that automatic reflex taking over.
Right. So the next week, she implemented the short script technique. She didn't over-explain, she just stated her unavailability. And in both instances where she used it, the other person adjusted easily. There was no lasting friction, she reclaimed those hours, and her baseline stress dropped immediately.
It's amazing what just a little clarity can do. There was another fascinating case too, Sarah, who worked in marketing.
Sarah's story is so common. She was the ultimate people pleaser, constantly taking on extra projects and answering messages late at night. She believed it was the only way to be valued by her team.
But there was a breaking point, right?
Yes. The breaking point for her was missing her own sister's birthday dinner because she had agreed to help a coworker with the presentation deck due the next morning.
The resentment there must have been overwhelming, especially when she realized the coworker could have easily finished it themselves. She sacrificed a major family milestone to subsidize someone else's procrastination.
And that specific pain led Sarah to adopt a new internal question before answering any request. She started asking, is this actually mine to carry?
Oh, that's a powerful question. Is this actually mine to carry?
It changes everything. She started pausing, using short responses, and softening years of built-up resentment simply by choosing her yeses instead of defaulting to them.
But here's the thing. Even with the perfect script, and even when you know it's not yours to carry, you are still going to feel a massive wave of guilt the moment the word no leaves your mouth. The biology guarantees it. So how do we survive that emotional fallout?
Handling the discomfort is step 10 of the toolkit. And it requires understanding that the intense discomfort usually fades within minutes for most people.
Really, just minutes.
Usually, yes. Even though it feels unbearable in anticipation, expecting that guilt spike and naming it is a vital step. Guilt after setting a healthy boundary is just a conditioned response.
It's not a signal you did something wrong.
Exactly. It is not proof that you messed up. It is simply your brain reacting to the breaking of an old habit. And the way through it is taking 15 seconds of self-compassion.
It's just 15 seconds.
Just 15 seconds. After every single no, you take a moment to acknowledge that you protected something important. You sit there and say, good job, you protected your time. This tiny act slowly rewires the brain's reward system.
Taking the dopamine back.
Yes, teaching your brain that saying no can feel like relief too. And part of surviving that guilt spike is also dismantling the major myths we hold. Myth number 1 is that saying no makes you selfish.
Which is what we all fear.
Right. But the fact is, setting clear boundaries is actually what allows you to show up fully and generously for the things you do choose, because you aren't perpetually running on empty.
You can't pour from an empty cup. And myth number 2 is that a no will ruin a relationship. We are terrified that if we deny a request once, the person will walk away forever.
But healthy relationships absolutely tolerate boundaries. If a relationship shatters just because you couldn't do a favor, there was a deep exploitative imbalance there to begin with.
The story of Michael in the sources illustrates this perfectly, I think. He was a dad, completely running on empty, serving as the default moving company, chauffeur, and last-minute babysitter for his entire extended family.
The classic good guy, burning himself out to keep everyone else warm.
Exactly. And he was losing patience with his own kids as a result. So when his brother asked for help moving furniture on a weekend, Michael finally used the tool.
He utilized a short script, right?
Yes, he just said, I cannot help this weekend. I need this time with my own family. And given his history of always saying yes, he braced for a massive explosion. He anticipated total conflict.
And what happened?
His brother simply replied, okay, no problem. The world did not end. Michael realized that almost all the resistance and anger he feared was happening entirely inside his own head.
Driven by that simulated social threat response.
Not the actual reactions of the people he loved. So what does this all mean? When we boil all this science and psychology down, the core takeaway for you, the listener, is that saying no isn't an act of rejection. It is an act of allocation.
That is the perfect word for it, allocation.
Your time and energy are finite resources. Every reflexive yes to someone else is a quiet, involuntary no to your own rest, your own priorities, or your own peace. If you are feeling completely buried by your commitments right now, it is not because you are weak.
No, it is because your incredible empathetic brain is prioritizing social harmony over your own basic survival. But you don't have to stay stuck in that loop. You have the power to insert that 3-second pause starting today.
It just takes practice.
It does. And as you begin to practice that pause, consider this final thought, which builds on everything we've explored today. When we constantly offer an automatic yes to everything, covering for everyone else's shortfalls and taking on every task, are we actually depriving other people of the opportunity to step up, take responsibility, and grow?
Oh, wow. That entirely flips the script.
What if your no is the exact thing someone else needs to finally discover their own capabilities?
Your boundary isn't just protecting you. It might actually be the catalyst that empowers them. That is brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you feel that knot in your stomach when your phone buzzes, remember, you have the brakes. You just have to use them. Take care.